Coming up, a dragon gets corralled by 7 cowboys. Raining meat pies as the Fords have a day out. And a Queen's birthday upset for the ages as the Bulldogs stun the Eels. Yes, hello, and welcome back to the Sideline Chat podcast, the one-stop shop for rugby league. It's Connor Marcellus with you once again. There is no Mark Hendry, unfortunately. Apparently, during the production last week, he suffered a concussion. The onside doctor said he was right to continue on with the production, but unfortunately, higher officials above us have ruled him out of the podcast for this week. No, nothing untoward about this, nothing to see here about his apparent concussion. He'll be back next week. Now, it is your NRL Week 15 debrief, and there is a bit of fallout from State of Origin 1, as well as some interesting developments for the women's game. But before we get into all of that, we've got to jump into the first game of round 15 of the Telstra Premiership, and it is the St. George Illawarra Dragons up against the South Sydney Rabbitohs. The Bunnies have the luxury of only one change, Blake Taaffe being named back on the interchange, with Peter Marmazelis being pushed back to the reserves, with still no Latrell Mitchell, with Cody Nikorima to continue at fullback. Meanwhile, for the home side, the debutant Jonathan Rubin drops out as Matt Vianney and Michaeli Ravawala return, with Tautau Moga also being pushed back to the reserves. Andrew McCulloch named to start at dummy half, with Jack DeBellin in the front row, with Jaden Sewer and Tarek Sims named in the second row, and at lock forward, Moses Mbai pushed back to the interchange, having started off as the dummy half for a couple of weeks, with no Josh Maguire as well. Now, both sides, contrasting events that unfolded for them across round 14, with a Friday night and Saturday afternoon clashes. The Cowboys getting up over the Dragons 31 points to 12, while the Rabbitohs were able to outlast the Titans at 30-16. I will start with the away side in this affair. It was a snooze fest for the first half. I will admit, it was to be expected that South Sydney would come away with the chocolates, but they definitely gave the Titans and something to think about out on that front right there. I mean, seriously, I expected South Sydney to put the Titans away much, much sooner than they did. It a slow start from both sides. It was really, the first 20 minutes was 3 tries, and then that was it. 8 points the difference at the break. And you would have thought Tino Fasua Malawi backing up after State of Origin 1, and with his double, including a try down the sideline. How many times do you see a forward go down the sideline? Doesn't happen very, very often, to say the least. But the edges of the Titans, both sides of the field, especially down their right-hand channel, poor. Just absolute poor performance from them right there. One word, it was pain. The Titans' edges, and they started all right when they got Greg Marju flying over. I thought he played all right for the Gold Coast. Of course, Tino gave his all as the Titans skipper, but the Rabbitohs just overwhelmed them. From Cody Walker's cutout passes to the beautiful, well-weighted kick from Lachlan Ilias, and then Jackson Paulo waiting on the end to receive that. And then, of course, some lazy defense and some good hole running from Damien Cook to set up Tane Mill for his try with 20 minutes to go until full time. But there was one hero for the Bunnies that stood head and shoulders above everyone. It was Alex Johnston. A hat-trick of tries, 160 running meters, and 6 tackle breaks. And apparently, he is now only the 15th player to reach 150 tries in their career. Think of that. A league of 15 players, including the great Ken Irvine, greatest try scorer that ever will be for Manly and North Sydney. And of course, Billy Slater retired on around about 196 tries in a decorated 15-year career right there, albeit hampered by ongoing shoulder injuries. But Mark, he expected this result to play out exactly. Not maybe the scoreline, but the result itself. And he sort of now has to ask the question, What happens now for Justin Holbrook? There's been talks in the press that he does have performance clauses in his contract. So could he be the fourth coach to go in the space of 2 weeks? With the way he puts it, that the Titans have assembled their roster, they should not be sitting last on the ladder. This is it's turned quickly into a train wreck, and I'll say Jamal Fogarty. 2 words that will continue to haunt the Gold Coast Titans until they can get Kieran Foran in there. But even then, will Foran be enough to turn the tide for the Titans? It's really hard to tell at the moment, but South, I honestly think they just keep finding ways to win. When people think they're not this threat, they just find a way to just settle in the top 8, at least the top 8, because I still think they are no chance of the top 4. Now, someone who is in the square frame of the top 4, the North Queensland Cowboys, after putting the ringer over the top of St. George Illawarra. Well, I'm glad Mark's not here because he knows what's going to be happening next, if he can even remember what happened from that. Probably not, but we'll see how that one pans out. Within 5 minutes, the Cowboys were on the try scorers sheet. Scott Drinkwater already in the opening 5 minutes. I mean, how quickly can you concede a try? Well, answer is 11 seconds. Just ask Kirasami Ava 5 years ago, round 24. But the Cowboys, even though they didn't have all their origin stars, or those that played, including Jeremiah Nanai, the hammer backed up, Valentine Holmes backed up, but he was shifting in between center and wing, they still put a number on the Dragons. And I'm talking a big, bad number right here. Jason Taumalolo, of course, there's been a whole lot of scrutiny over him in the past, but 207 running meters, 4 tackle breaks, 1 line break, and a line break assist in the lead up to the Reece Robson try. How bad do you have to do with this before you say, you know what, we need to change something? Now, the Dragons, they got a lucky try right before halftime, but that did not solve any woes whatsoever. Through the middle, they got egged off big time. Just lazy defense. And it's right there from St. George Illawarra. And as Mark put it, North Queensland have showed yet again why they are sitting in the top 4 this year. Just poor defense from the Dragons, and they really couldn't spark anything in attack. They simply didn't show up, and the Cowboys, as he reckons, they scored some fairly easy tries. And that defense they should be working on heavily heading into this match against the Bunnies. Now, what do the Dragons need to do? Well, ultimately, defense played a big role in that at defeat against North Queensland. As for South Sydney, I would probably think, tighten up on the edge defense and try and keep Cody Walker on the ball. I think that's probably the best thing you can do in this situation right here. I don't know what more to say about the Dragons after that, shall I? King. Playing field's pretty much evened out, but the Walker, Murray and Cook combination could still be a worry right there if they get behind early in the piece. Mark reckons that the Rabbitohs will smash St. George Illawarra by 34, calling it a Rabbitohs 13 plus. I will say it is a South Sydney 13 plus scoreline as well. Now, moving on to the first of the Friday night games is the Manly Seagulls up against those men from Townsville, the North Queensland and Cowboys right here at Brookie. Of course, Ruben Cotter now back on deck in the front row with Cohen Hess going back to the bench. Jeremiah Nanai, after a miraculous recovery from his ankle injury suffered in Origin 1, he's now back for the side, replacing Tom Gilbert, who is out with an eye injury, and unfortunately, Helam Lukey is out for the rest of the year with an ACL injury. So Kaneli Lemuelu will also be in the starting side, named in the second row. Other than that, no real changes for the Cowboys backline, apart from the return of Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow. As for Manly, well, there's really been no changes to this point. I mean, apart from the return of Daly Cherry Evans, the core of their side is still there. Schuster back to the bench, Ben Trebojevic to the reserves, and Kieran Foran will be back at 5'8". Now, Manly, they too played over the weekend and dominated the West Tigers 30 points to 4. Brett Comorley's first game in charge for the Tigers, and it couldn't have gone any much worse for them. 40 minutes of pain in the second half existed for the Tigers. But if you ask Des Hasler and the Sea Eagles, that was probably a good passage of play they had. A defensive shutout, if ever there was one. And the Tigers' middle just got opened up at more than a bag of chips. Pathetic. It was inconceivable to think they had one try in it, 2 points the difference at halftime, and Brett Comorley's first game in charge. And it just went downhill pretty much from word go of the second half whistle. And we got to talk about the spear tackle. If you try and convince to me that was not a spear tackle Brett Naden did on Jake Trebojevic, I'm sorry, I don't know what game you're watching. That was worthy of a send-off. Plain and simple. You could have paralysed the bloke. And Jake Trebojevic as well. Who would want Jake Trebojevic paralysed from the neck down? That's what I want to know. And of course, Josh just had another reasonable crack at playing at 5'8" right there. Wouldn't say he had a big influence on the game. He looked good at stages. Basketball pass, I wouldn't try and do that again for Jason Saab. Not in a hurry. But other than that, I think just keep building. The side's looking pretty good at the moment, but the damage was really done through the middle of the field. And speaking of the middle, Josh Aloiai, the former Tiger himself, what about his performance? 2 tries, 224 running meters, 6 tackle breaks, and 2 line breaks. And that embarrassing moment where he's got 3 or 4 blokes, Hastings included, just hanging off him, and he still manages to find on the Campbelltown turf. What an embarrassing defensive passage right there. And they did have David in Norfoluma back. They had Brooks in the halves. They had Dane Laurie playing fullback. This dream spine the Tigers were hoping would click. It just didn't. I'm sorry, it just didn't. And as Mark noted, it wasn't the way they would have wanted to start under Comorley, but he can't fix things overnight. And it didn't change anything out there on the field. Well, it probably won't change for a couple of weeks, to be quite fair. And really, the wrecking balls, Aloiai, for that moment, Hamole Olakawatu, who he put in a good performance as well. And what about Tolo Kula finally getting his first try in the NRL? How good was that? Always good to see. Which brings us to this game. Well, now we've got ourselves a real contest on our hands right here. We've got, my pick still to be the Premiers, even though that is a fleeting pipeline on fantasy at this point in time with the way the Sea Eagles have progressed thus far this year. But if there was ever a time to put on a run, maybe this is the time. I'm looking at this North Queensland side and I'm thinking, this is going to be another dominant performance right here. I think these Cowboys are playing with all the confidence in the world right here, right now, and there is nothing really stopping them. For Manly to win, I think they need to limit Taumalolo's impact on the middle of the field. We saw what happened against the Dragons. They got on an aim up in the middle of the field to try and take them on, and do not give Scott Drinkwater any time to play make out the back whatsoever. Those two who are proving pivotal for Todd Payton's side at the moment. But the power game is key right here, and I don't think Manly have the forwards to match this North Queensland aggression that they are playing with, nor could they possibly break down their defensive resolve that they have built up over the course of nearly 4 months of this season. Mark's prediction for this game, he says the Cowboys to win by 18, so he's calling it a North Queensland 13-plus win, and I really have to agree with him right here. I think the Cowboys do romp home 13-plus and continue to apply pressure upon the Melbourne Storm for a home qualifying final. Now from the beaches of Brookie to the suburbs of Melbourne as the Storm play host to the Brisbane Broncos right here. Big outs for the Broncos. No Adam Reynolds having gone off with a rib injury. So Tyrone Roberts will be back for the first time since round 1 to play at halfback. Tony Staggs will be back in the side after suffering a cork shoulder, with Branko Lee to hold his place in the centres as Herbie Farnworth has unfortunately been in sideline through injury. Of course, Selwyn Cobber back as well, as is Kurt Capewell after backing up Origin 1. So TC Robati goes to the reserves with no Corey Pakes, Jake Turpin on the bench. And there are questions over Payne Haas's fitness being named, but still suffering that AC joint injury. As for Melbourne, Ryan Papenhuyzen was named to start, but he's since been ruled out, unfortunately, due to COVID. So Nick Meaney will more than likely, Nick Meaney has been named to continue starting at fullback, with Grant Anderson and holding his place in the side after a good debut performance for the Melbourne Storm. Harry Grant pushing the Cheese back to the bench, and Kafusi pushing named back in the side. After that elbow on Sam Walker's head that he dropped and was somehow overturned. And then and there. Now, Melbourne, a tight contest, but they did get the better of the Sydney Roosters, 28 points to 60 at the SCEG. They just opened up the Roosters' left side defensively big time. Like, from the the Cheese, I have to say, because Harry Grant was not playing. Jerome Hughes commanded that side down the right-hand side as well. We've known and we've talked about Melbourne's leaky right side defense, but it was the right side attack that was doing all the damage in this clash right here. Yeah, and Grant Anderson, what a beneficiary was he of this side right here. On his debut, 2 tries, 84 run meters, 3 tackle breaks, and 2 line breaks. I gotta say, how about that? Good on him for a good performance with the Melbourne Storm, which has been probably one of the best sides of the last 10 years in the National Rugby League. There is just nothing better than seeing Melbourne just this next man up mentality that they have got. And of course, we got to see Joseph Sawali and Sam Walker stunning some pure class moments right here. There's some absolute class shown from these 2 youngsters right here, who no doubt in 5 to 10 years' time, they will be leading the State of Origin battle or torch for the Roosters or whoever they might end up with in the future. But rather unfortunately, Melbourne found a way to break through, and again, the right edge, Grant Anderson's second try, as well as a second try for Marion Seve and Felice Kafusi. Wow, talk about lax defense, just slicing all the way through the Roosters' left edge defensively, going through Sam Walker and past James Tedesco to put the icing on the cake, despite what could have been a try of the year contender had Satili Tupanua held on to the ball or at a very competitive scoreline. Melbourne simply overturned the deficit and came away with yet another 2 competition points. Roosters, it's another one back to the drawing board after letting that game get away from them in the second half. As for the Broncos, wow, what a contest we had here in the capital of Queensland and right here. A stunning performance from both sides. The Raiders really looking to take it to the Queensland powerhouse, and I am saying that with great accuracy at the moment. The Broncos are reasserting themselves right here. Zach Walford. He is just making a case continuously to be the Raiders' long-term dummy half and really keeping Tom Starling on the bench. I have been impressed as with Walford's rise through the ranks down at the nation's capital. And yet, Mark has said it was a very close contest with barely any tries in the second half. Try for try, proving to be very unpredictable right here. He reckons the Raiders, like the Roosters, shouldn't be too disappointed with the result, and they should keep their heads high as they are starting to come on strong again. And after a horror run, well, inconsistency has played, and the dominance around the goal line defense of the Broncos was tested, and to be quite fair, it did not hold up with Horsburgh crashing over, and then you had Alan Elliott slicing through to give the Raiders their third try of the night and lock the scores up right on the bell of half-time. The scores are locked. Well, the Raiders in front, 18 points to 16, with a second try to Herbie Farnworth, who, despite going down injured, was the Broncos standout here. 2 tries, 96 running meters, and 2 tackle breaks. So this will be the big test for the Broncos right here as we come back down to Melbourne. We have got a Storm side that knocked off the Roosters no trouble in the second half with some brilliant debutantes and outcast players who sort of, through no fault of their own, I would have to say, found themselves on the outer for some time. This is a clash that always goes one way. Reynolds not being there will hurt the Broncos' chances. Tyrone Roberts has only played 1 game with Brisbane this year, spent the rest of the time in reserve grade. They showed that resilience against the Newcastle Knights when they didn't have Reynolds there and they put on an absolute clinic. But the injury concerns to Haas and Staggs, this turns it off for me, especially with as we've seen the Melbourne Storm are just too good every time they take the field, unless they're playing the Panthers or the Cowboys, as we've seen so far. And Mark sort of sees the writing on the wall here for Brisbane as well. A Storm win by 14 points, so calling it a Melbourne 13, and I also side with the 13-plus winning margin right there. Now, the Sharks are off at Coffs Harbour at the CEX Coffs International Stadium, playing host to the Gold Coast Titans. AJ Brimson back at fullback after spending a week in isolation. Jermaine Asako back to the wing with Isan Masters. Surprise, surprise, back to the reserve. Tino at lock, Fotuaker on the bench with Aaron Clark named at dummy half, with Kevin Proctor included amongst the reserves. Whilst for the Sharks, no changes whatsoever. From the side that ran out 38-16 winners over the New Zealand Warriors. We've already touched on how well the Titans failed. Oh, yes, how well they cocked that one up. Now, Cronulla, they had a bit of a first half scare and some lax goal line defense. First, falling for the dummy of Reece Walsh, and then they fell for Wade Egan out of dummy half. And at 12-0, I was sitting there listening to the radio on ABC Grandstand, and after clocking off work, and I could not believe the Warriors were actually in front at this point. I couldn't. I genuinely couldn't believe that this was happening right here, right now. And then the regular programming kicked in. The flanks, wow. Now, what we got out of the Cronulla Sharks. Wow, wow, wow. What an absolute turnaround. After going down 12-0 early, they just dominated for the rest of the game. And the Titans' errors did not help their cause whatsoever. That was absolutely embarrassing from the Warriors in that second half. And really, after getting out to that early 12-0 lead, it just turned into an absolute bloodbath. Matt Moylan running the show, but the heroes of the day. Wow. what about the wingers of the Sharks? They were really in a contest of their own. It was like, as Andrew Voss said in the commentary, it was a game in a game, but the two wingers trying to see who could outscore the other, and they were the Sharks' two standout players, because I like to exercise editorial powers that I abuse probably too regularly, if I reckon so myself. First of all, Sione Katoa, 3 tries, 128 running meters, 7 tackle breaks, and a line break. Followed up by Ronaldo Mulatalo's 2 tries, 154 running meters, 3 tackle breaks, and an offload. How did he manage to stay in for that second try? That's what I want to know. How in the hell did he stay in on that one? And of course, Dallin Watene-Zelezniak not wanting to miss out on all the fun the Sharks wingers were having. How about that gravity-defying try he scored in the second half? Chef's kiss. That is a chef's kiss for wingers right there. A 10 out of 10 from those 3 wingers right there. But of course, the Sharks came away with the results right there. It was a second half collapse for the Warriors. I'm sorry to say it, but it was. And Stacey Jones, he should be wanting to wring the necks of several players in that at the moment. Not the ones that try hard, like Reece Walsh. A couple of errors from him, admittingly, but he's the one trying something, at least. At least he's putting his back into it. And there's all this talk about Sean Johnson at the moment. Will he stay? Will he finish out his contract? Will he retire at the end of the year? I can't give you that answer, so we'll just have to wait and see how that one pans out in the end. And CSC for Talakai, he had a good game as well, despite the ongoing nature of his police problem at the moment, I would have to say, after that warrant was issued for his arrest. Will he be named to stay in the side, or will Connor Tracy shift into the centres? I don't know that one either. And he has been named for Tonga as well, so is a test jersey at stake here? That's a matter for the Sharks. Once we have more information on the matter, we'll provide commentary on that. But really, just the Sharks' resilience and on full display right there. But their goal kicking from Nico Hines could use a lot of work in this game. And right here. Now, getting back for the Gold Coast, this is going to turn into an ugly affair here on Coffs Harbour. The Titans demoralised, out of form against the Red Hawk Sharks side. Mark has already seen this as well. The Sharks to win at 26 points, so he's calling it 13 plus. I also think it's a 13 plus performance. Now, speaking of the Warriors, they'll be at home for their final game at the Moreton Daily Stadium at Redcliffe before their much-anticipated return to Auckland, to Mount Smart Stadium, to face the West Tigers. But they first have to have their farewell game, and they have to play against the Penrith Panthers. Never any fun. And you have to play the Panthers. Bunty Afoa into the starting side with no Ben Murdoch-Masila. Aaron Penne will be on the bench. And Josh Curran shits onto an edge with no Ewan Aiken due to concussion. Adam Vanua-Blake could make a return in this game as he has been sidelined since round 11 with a foot injury, but he has been named on the extended bench. As for the Panthers, only change, Isaiah Yeo back in the sides after spending a week out with concussion. And with Matt Eisenhuth back to the reserves. As for the Warriors, several changes. Ronnie Volkman will make his NRL debut. The much-anticipated Roosters Jr. getting his start under Stacey Jones. With Chanel Harris-Tavita going back to the bench. And Jesse Arthurs is named in the centres. I should have mentioned those changes as well. Well, the Warriors... This is going to be another ugly display here as well as the Panthers. Well, surprise, surprise. I probably called it better than most. A response from Nathan Cleary. And oh boy, did we get a response from Nathan Cleary. As the Panthers down the Newcastle Knights 42 points to 6 in an hour and 10-minute masterclass. We don't even need to talk about the Knights' only try. It was some good ball from Leo Thompson, of all players, as they were able to stretch the Panthers' And after an hour and 13 minutes of getting belted around the park, after getting run off their feet big time. And Mark asked the question here, as well as Justin Holbrook, could Adam O'Brien also be that fourth coach to go within 2 weeks? And I called it as well. Nathan Cleary would respond in this game. He would, after not necessarily playing his best against Queensland. And right here, we are going to get towards that soon. But one try, the first try of the afternoon, one try assist, 52 running meters, a 40-20, 3 tackle breaks, and 7 from 8 goals converted. Absolutely destroyed the Knights around the middle. And there were just some tries you had to see to believe. Whether it was Viliami Kickow setting up Isaac Tago or Nathan Cleary finding ball to Crichton with the footwork that could make John Travolta jealous with that Saturday night feat, either right there. But this was a masterclass. A masterclass that illustrates the Penrith Panthers' premiership credentials, still 2 points clear at the top of the ladder, and really highlights how far the Newcastle Knights have fallen down the pecking order of decent rugby league sides. And Mark poses this question: what in the hell do Newcastle do now? And does he ask, is Kalyn Ponga having second thoughts on his contract extension of $5 million? Well, I would probably answer that question. It's only about the money. He's fine for the next 5 years unless there's a regime change at the Knights, whether that be in the coaching staff or on the boardroom, or even the ownership, if you're asking West Leagues. Who knows? But it's really, he's become what Mr. Luke Sports likes to refer to as the new Club Dane Gagai. The old Club Dane Gagai, that he could look like a superstar at State of Origin level, but he just looked rubbish at club level. And I think that analogy he uses with Dane Gagai, you can apply that right here, right now, to Kalyn Ponga. The worst $5 million investment I have seen in the last few years. It would have been Taumalolo, but he's starting to earn that money back again, and the fact that the Cowboys are sitting third and the Knights in 12th. That really says everything, doesn't it? Even with a rookie 5'8" and hoping to turn things around, this is going to be an ugly result for the Warriors ahead of a much-deserved and long-anticipated homecoming. The Panthers win this 13-plus marks, narrowed his margin down to 38. Now, out of the final of the Saturday games, the Parramatta Eels back at home at CommBank Stadium to the Sydney Roosters. The Roosters licking their wounds after going down to Melbourne. Luke Keary has been named, but is monitoring concussions. And Sam Verrill's back in the side after returning from a collarbone injury. He drew Hutchinson back to the bench, and Paul Momirovski sidelined for Billy Smith. Rather surprising there. South Sydney-bound Daniel Saluka for feet to the reserves, and Egan Butcher has been included on the bench. While for Brett Arthur, after a horror Queen's birthday debut against the Canterbury Bulldogs, he has chosen to name the same 17 for this clash. Now, we've already talked about the Roosters, how they lost that at the back end, and contrast that with the Eels' Queen's birthday debut against the Canterbury Bulldogs. 34 points to 4. You heard that one right. This is the upset of the year. And I'm house spewing that I didn't call all this in my tipping. I went with Parramatta when I should have gone with the Dogs. But hey, I support both clubs, so this is a win-win situation for me. That my first team gets up over my second team, right? Here on the Queen's birthday, which, 3 straight on the trot, and a dominant record overall. Only 2 Queen's birthday fixtures we've lost since it came in 2015. So, 5 from 7. I'm happy with that. That's a pretty good result if you ask me. And Mark, perfect. He sums this up perfectly. What the actual hell did we witness here? I mean, seriously, quoting from him, who on earth would have seen this result coming, and he says this was Canterbury's best game by a country mile. Well, they reckon this is the best performance the Bulldogs have put in the last 5 years. I can't argue with that. This is the perennial premiership heavyweight we went up against. No chance whatsoever. Best forward still in Luke Thompson, still suffering from ongoing concussion issues right here. And we tear the Eels apart. 3 forwards backing up from State of Origin. We dominate through the middle. We let Pangai Jr. loose. It was a little bit of a scuffle between Aaron Schopp and Will Penasini. That really rattled the Eels. And this masterclass that we saw. From the word go, the Dogs were in charge. They were in charge. I think looking back on it now, this was a dominant result. The Eels pushed a lot of passes, as they shouldn't have. The mistakes compounded. They got frustrated, and the Bulldogs, they just capitalized. There were some brilliant moments. First off, Jake Avarilla's first try. The mitts stuck out off the RCG loose pass. How did he not get caught right there? Second one, the Jacob Carraz try, where he stands up Clint Gutherson, a beautiful 2-on-1 created by Kyle Flanagan, and out on the right-hand side. And probably the chef's kiss. Well, 2 chef's kisses. First, the second Jake Avarilla try with the beautiful ball movement that many reckon harkens back to the days of the Entertainers, as with that beautiful grubber kick from Burton. And speaking of Burton, his partner in crime, the Fox, Josh Adokar, saying, Freddie, you got Daniel Tupou playing for Tonga in a couple of weeks. I'm ready, baby. Let's trot. And let's trot he did. 3 tries, 197 run meters, 5 tackle breaks, and a line break. And a beautiful gesture after the game. He gave the jersey off his back to a young fan in the crowd. Don't you love to hear a good story like that? Now, I think the Roosters are probably looking at that and thinking, oh yeah, Parramatta are going to be an easy beat. They just got walloped by the Bulldogs after getting walloped by the Cowboys in Darwin, and they got sliced by one on Easter Monday by the West Tigers. This game's ours for the taking. Not so fast. The Roosters' record of playing the Eels at CommBank isn't too pretty. Now, admittingly, that is only based on 2 results we have right here. It's a 1-1 even split. At the round 6 meeting in 2020, followed up by a round 8 meeting last year. Yep. And of course, there were some good games in between. The Magic at round 10, the Eels will not have forgotten that. And I think after a week to recalibrate and reset, I'm expecting Parramatta to come out and say, we're not easy beats. We are not easy beats. CommBank is our fortress and yours to try and storm. Genuinely, that is honestly what I think right there. I think they will look at that 80-minute horror show that they put up and they'll say, right, that was an 80-minute horror show. Let's do something about it. And so they'll focus on trimming out the errors, not pushing the passes, and just focus on dominating through the middle. Because when these Parramatta forwards get going, they can lay the platform for Brown and Moses and Gutherson to work their magic. Of course, Mark doesn't see it that way after that result. For the Eels, he reckons the Roosters will get home by 16, calling it a Roosters 13-plus affair. I'm actually going to call it an Eels 7-12 win. I think Parramatta will bounce back, and we will see a spectacular bounce back at home in front of the Parramatta faithful, looking for something before all this side is slowly broken up. Now onto the Sunday games. We have the Canberra Raiders up against the Newcastle All Knights for our first game Sunday afternoon. Kurt Mann will be moved into lock forward, Barnett to the second row, and Lachlan Fitzgibbon given the chop. With Pasami Solo, the new face, on the interchange bench, and Bradman Best has been listed as still being another week away in the best case scenario. One change also for the Canberra Raiders. Jordan Rapana back on the flank. And after serving one game on the sideline. And so the Raiders have their full complement and back Matt Frawley dropping out once again. Well, we've already talked how bad the Newcastle Knights were, and the Canberra Raiders, to be fair, were unlucky in a thrilling game up at Suncorp. Well, like Mark said, they shouldn't be too disheartened by what the Raiders put up right here. Yeah, and I think there will be a bounce back factor towards this. Newcastle, they are just deep in a hole, and there's no way for them to go out. I don't know what I think the Raiders need to improve on. Of course, they let that game slide, but the Broncos bouncing back. So that's another halftime lead they surrendered, which is not boding well for their halftime record. But I think at home, they got their game plan right, and Fogarty played a good first half performance as well. So more match fitness for Fogarty, more chances of second half wins, and if they can retain that defensive result that they spent the last 3 years building, that has suddenly gone on loose again, I think that they can bounce back here as the Knights sink deeper into a hole that they have dug for themselves. Mark said the Raiders to win by 24 points at a 13 plus. I think this will be a lot tighter contest against the Knights, but they'll still go down. Raiders win 7-12. It's just the way I see things playing out. And finally, of round 15, it is the Canterbury Bulldogs going up against the West Tigers at the CommBank Stadium in Parramatta. A big in for the West Tigers. Adam Dewey will make his long-awaited return on the bench for the Tigers, with Kepoa taking the place of Brett Naden after he was sent off and banned for the last 3 weeks. Luciano Leilua, in a blow, however, has been granted an immediate release to join the North Queensland Cowboys. Whether that still goes ahead due to salary cap constraints is another thing entirely. With Kalma Tuolangi back in the starting side after being on the bench in the last game, and New Brown, the utility in place of Jock Madden. As for the Bulldogs, Chris Patolo suffered a concussion against the Eels, so he's been ruled out, with Curtis Morin to make his NRL debut, described by the Bulldogs themselves as one of the New South Wales Cup's best ball-playing lock forwards. Raymond Vitala Mariner named to start once again. Corey Waddell back to the bench, whilst Arvasia Marapanai has also not been named in the squad for Michael Potter, with Max King moving to the front row and Pangai Jr. to start at lock forward. Well, we saw what the Bulldogs did to the Eels, and I think they would have had a pretty good training session after that. The question is, can they back it up? They got this big third win on the board. Or second win, third win, actually. Yeah, third win on the board. Or right here. They moved up the bottom of the ladder. The question is, can they back it up with all the emotion that got sucked in and that put into that good performance? Short answer? Yes. Yes, I actually think they can back this up. This little ray of sunshine that is finally starting to break through. And we got Kick Out coming, Marnie coming. We all know this. Ryan Sutton coming. Juniors are wanting to re-sign onwards. A bright prospects by the name of Yosa Papali'i. Whether there's any relation to Josh Papali'i, don't know. Would be definitely interesting to find that one out. The Tigers were humiliated by Manly, and with Brett Kamali lining up against one of his former clubs right here, I'm expecting nothing different from the West Tigers. I think the Bulldogs, they can trouble the Tigers if they continue the same blueprint, unsettle them early through the middle, and then just pick them off in and around the ruck, burden them off some early clean ball. There's going to be a party at CommBank that's going to be cascading blue and white. Mark has called this as well. The Bulldogs to win by 20 points at 13 plus. I think a much more respectable margin. I think the Bulldogs win this one 7 points to 12 as well. Now, from NRL to State of Origin, the fallout from Game 1 as Queensland ruined the homecoming for the Blues, 16 points to 10. Well, I have got to say, I lost my voice in the final 30 minutes, especially the final 10 minutes. Lost it completely. Like, I was on borderline Darren Lockyer impersonations right here with a full head of hair. There was a controversy right on the siren. Isaiah Yeo. The siren blew for full time. He was just playing the ball. Were New South Wales denied one last play to try and force the game into extra time? Mark reckons there was. As he says, Yeo definitely played the ball as the siren went off, but the referee blew full time. With every other game you watch, that would normally be allowed, but in this case it wasn't, and he believes this was one of the reasons that cost New South Wales Game 1 of State of Origin. But there were other factors behind this as well. I think excuse me, poor defence of the scrum play that led to the Daly Cherry Evans try. That did not, whether or not Junior Paulo could have gotten to the ball into the space that Cherry Evans ran through, I think that is a topic for another day, to say the least. Some of Freddie's controversial picks, Jack Whiten, he actually played very well in the centres, despite the Raiders' obvious form struggles. So justified on that one, Freddie. I will give you that. Turns out you did know what you were doing with having an experienced sort of centre named alongside two debutants. Daniel Tupou, well, now we know he's not going to be playing for the Blues. He's actually going to be lining up for Tonga, as Dean Young has named his side. We'll touch more on that as well. But there were some moments from Queensland that illustrates why they have been dominant at State of Origin over the last more than 10 years. Why, if you go from Mal to Kevy, and now starting with Billy Slater, only one game, but this core belief, not just of underdogs, but just turning up, and this resilience. Cam Munster, how many times did you see him pull off a one-on-one strip? Who thinks of a one-on-one strip at State of Origin level? Well, apparently, out of a crowd of what Joey Johns describes as 90,000, one. Try-savers, Valentine Holmes, and he was a standout for Queensland in this first State of Origin clash. One try, 148 running meters, 3 tackle breaks, and 2 from 4 goals converted. But the main reason, Queensland's X-Factor, Harry Grant, changing the dynamic of Origin 1 in favour of the Maroons and their defence in pressuring Nathan Cleary. And this was mentioned by Gus Gould on his 6 Tackles podcast, and this was translated. We saw this in real time, how Queensland contained both Cleary and Luai in creating any meaningful pressure on the back 5. And of course, Selwyn Cobbo backed up all right, or we will back up. So we'll see how that one plays out for the Maroons when they go to Perth. Will it be a series-deciding match? Or will it be a New South Wales domination in the Golden West? That's not for me to say, but obviously with injury concerns and players is electing to represent their country of heritage, Freddie has got a couple of selection picks on his mind. Ultimately, Josh Adokar is at the top of that list. It's right there. Whether or not Stephen Crichton puts his hand up to represent Samoa in the Pacific Test Invitational or to be played next week, that is another matter for Freddie to consider. But ultimately, we do know that Jack Whiten will retain his place in the Blues side come Game 2. Now, a couple of other things as well. Before we wrap things up, and I know this has been dragging out almost close to an hour, so I'll try and keep it short and sweet. The NRLW just announced today, which is why we delayed this until about 2:30 in the afternoon to start this up. It's actually 26 past by the time of recording. But they announced an expansion to the NRLW Telstra Premiership for the women's competition, with Canberra Raiders, the Cronulla Sharks, the North Queensland Cowboys, and the West Tigers all due to enter after being granted a 2023 NRLW license by the NRL. Now, there was speculation, and this might have happened. It was originally meant for 8 teams in 2023, but the ARL have determined to fast track that to expand to 4 sides. It's right there. Good point made by Andrew Abdo about sort of the footprint from a geographical standpoint of view, that there is now women's footpath or development NRLW representation from the far north of Queensland all the way down to the nation's capital, and of course the West Tigers' absolute goldmine of talent from Concord all the way down to Macarthur. That is something rather impressive, you would have to admit right there. Of course, I knew the Cowboys would have been selected regardless, because 3 Queensland teams is always preferable for the NRL in any given circumstance whatsoever. And of course, more opportunities for women, where apparently 5 years ago, interesting statistic, there were at least 10,000 women and girls playing all various types of rugby league, whether it be the touch, tackle, or tag. That number today, over 35,000, a 3.5 time growth of the number of women playing rugby league. How good is that? Honestly, how good is that, as we strive to try and keep up with the NRLW, and showing that by covering it in our season 2 essentially of the Sideline Chat podcast, where we do that same favor for the Betfred Women's Super League. Well, it's all about matter of timing and whether, because we got to remember, we are only a 2-man operation. We edit, we source our own interviews, and we try and find topics to cover when we can, and time pending. So I think this is a good step forward, and be very curious to see where the expansion goes in the future. Responsibly, I would hope, moving forward with that. And finally, to cover it off, we have the Tonga squad named by Dean Young, filling in for Christian Wolf as he continues his commitments with St. Helens. This is the side he has assembled to face New Zealand next Saturday. Tolo Kula will be handed a Tonga jumper named at fullback. The wingers Daniel Tupou and Sione Katoa from the Sharks. Siosifa Talakai and Moses Suli are named in the centres, with Katoni Staggs and Talatau Amone in the halves. Of course, the captain at lock, it is Jason Taumalolo, with Satili Tupanua and Keon Kaloma-Tungi in the back row. Up front, it is Siosiwa Tsauki Aho from the Roosters before joining the Catalan Dragons next year. Saliva Havili and Adam Fanua-Blake, a name to play, which, depending how he pulls up with injury. And off the bench, Sodi Luke, Hamole Olakawatu, Tavita Pangai Jr., and Tavita often goes by Junior Tatol. Although 18th man is Moaki Fotueka, extended side Will Penasini, Isaiah Katoa, Andrew Fafita, Joe Offengawi, Stafford Toa, Christian Tuapolotu, and Eli Katoa. Interesting calls, of course, Daniel Tupou on the wing, Katoni Staggs in the 5'8" role, and Hamole Olakawatu named on the bench for Dean Young, and potentially for Christian Wolf come the World Cup in mid-October, or should I say late October. Very reasonable side assembled. Of course, there is no Ben Murdoch-Masilla, who has been a presence in the Tongan 4-pack in the past. No Tui Lola here from the Huddersfield Giants, though he will be named in the World Cup squad for sure. And there's no Conrad Hurrell either. So the Huddersfield fullback and the Saints centre will definitely be in consideration, as well as Will Hobawati come the end of the year. And Michael Maguire still in charge of the Kiwis, so he still has a coaching position to his name. And Big Nelson and Sofa Solomona is part of his Kiwi squad. The Bromwich brothers, Jesse and Kenny. Dylan Brown been handed a Kiwi test jumper over Sean Johnson in a big sign that the Kiwis are moving forward. Gold Coast dummy half Aaron Clark, Fisher Harris, Kieran Foran, Peter Hiku, Jerome Hughes, Moses Leota, Isaac Liu, Joey Manu, Tamare Martin, Ken Mamalo, Ronaldo Mulatalo after the whole eligibility controversy of 2021, Cowboys youngster Griffin Neem, Britton Nakora, Marata Niokore, Isaiah Papali'i, Jordan Rapana, Jordan Ricky, The Cheese, Scott Sorensen, Joe Tarpany, and Dallin Wateni-Zalesniak. Now, we don't know the final makeup of what Michael Maguire's side is right there. There are some big questions to be named right there. Rather interesting, he hasn't named Chance Nickel-Klukstad in his Kiwi side. He was named in the past in 2019. Which would indicate to me, well, one, injury, but two, could he be picked for the Cook Islands when they are due to play against, well, let's just take a look at the international fixtures that will be dominating the standalone rep weekend for the final time. I'm until the promise of a new rolling calendar at the end of the year. So, we've got the Kiwis up against Vatayama Tonga. We have got at the Cook Islands engaging in Toa Samoa and of course Papua New Guinea playing off against the Fiji Bati, Kevin Nagama and Viliami Kikau named as captain and vice captain of the Bate side respectively. We will talk more about at the international sides in next week's edition because there's this full time from us right here. If you like this part of the Sideline Chat podcast or the Betfred Super League international rep of the representing Super League part tomorrow, make sure you leave this part a like. Click the subscribe button and click that notifications bell so you never miss a week of rugby league action. Don't forget to give us a follow on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram. It is Sideline Chat, and on Twitter it is Sideline Chat RL. Hope you enjoy the NRL that follows this week, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. We'll see you then.